And we are live. How's it going, all you amazing Mets fans? It's your guy Wardy, and we're back at it with our latest New York Metropolitan pregame coverage. And just give me 1 second, everybody. I just bolted up my stairs. That's why the intro ran a second time, because my dog had to be the biggest pain in the you-know-what imaginable. So I had to take care of that for a second. Now we're back, and now we're here to talk about the amazings as I'm catching my breath right now. So, whew, okay. Think we're good. I think we're locked and loaded. How you doing, everybody? I'm absolutely locked in. I'm both anxious and excited for tonight's matchup against the Milwaukee Brewers. And I have to be completely honest with each and every one of you, as we're going to deep dive to an absolute T, not only the starting pitching matchup between Sean Manaea and Frankie Montas, also the lineups between the Brewers and the Mets, as you guys can see here, the return of Francisco Lindor. But what I want to know is a temperature check, first and foremost. How excited versus anxious are you guys for this 3-game set? I'm very anxious. I'm going to be completely honest, but I'm not as anxious as I was heading into the series against the Atlanta Braves. And I don't know why. I think it's just more so when I think Atlanta, that's where good things go to die. But also when the Mets go to Milwaukee, that's when good things go to die too. So I'm not exactly sure what the reasoning is outside just the rivalry between the Mets and the Braves. But I'm curious, where do you guys stand, each and every one of you? How do you guys feel right now? Let's hear it. What time is the game? No, the game is at 8:10 tonight, my friend. Whatever happened to Rally Bunnies? The Rally Bunnies are actually right behind me. You guys can't see, they're out of frame right now. And they're doing amazing. Both Gigi and Stormy, for all you amazing followers. If you know, you know. But let me do a quick roll call to everyone first chiming in live on a replay. Then from there, we will do a complete deep dive on everything to know about this matchup, doing a complete preview from Manaea to Montas to the respective lineups that you see tonight. How do you guys feel about the lineups? And also seeing the latest comments from David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza when speaking about not only the chance to obviously crack postseason play, but also the return of Francisco Lindor. How's he feeling? How's he looking? What led them ultimately to the decision? That and more is what we're going to get into in a second, everybody. But let's see here. John, how you doing? Alex, Jason, Sean, Giovanni, John, great member, Carlos, Edward, Aiden, Eugene. I love Jose Iglesias. I do too. JT, Straight Talk with Jack Graham, great member. Frank, how you doing? Jordy, how you doing? Giovanni, Steve, great member. Mike O'Brien, great member. Anthony, great member. Going up the list here, Ethan, how you doing? Scott A, 2 different Scotts there. Michael Saya, Peter, Mike Fagan. Thank you guys all so much for taking the time. James Carroll, great member in here as always too. I'm nauseously optimistic. That's a really good way to go about explaining things, right? I'm nauseously optimistic for tonight's game, right? I don't feel good. I feel very anxious, a little nauseous, but I am optimistic about the Mets to secure a victory. I like that. Hey, Cozy, how are you? Happy to have you in here. Alan says, I'm nervous about this. Again, I think we're all going to be nervous until the Mets officially crack postseason play. Knocking on wood, assuming, God willing, that they do find themselves in that position. Until we officially get to that point, we're all going to be angst. We're all going to be at the edge of our seats, rightfully so. And I don't blame any one of you whatsoever. And as you guys know, we will be live for post-game coverage directly after the conclusion of Game 1, Game 2, Game 3, if we have the doubleheader on Monday, and then ultimately from there, whether the season is over for the Mets, which is the worst case scenario, or whether the season continues there in a postseason play beginning Tuesday, we'll be covering the Mets to a T every single day, as we always do here on the largest Mets platform, not directly affiliated with the club themselves here on YouTube, thanks to all you amazing Mets fans. But let's see what you guys got for me in the chat right now. Wardy, do you think this team is better than 2015? Oh, on paper, 1,000%. I mean, there's no question. I love the rotation when we look back in 2015, obviously. A young Jacob deGrom before he even hit his peak. You know, Noah Syndergaard doing amazing things and just having so many weapons going in your favor. However, I'll just say this on the time. That wasn't to down Matt Harvey at all either. Those are the two guys I think of first before I think of Matt, if I'm being completely frank, when I think of 2015, because Jacob deGrom and Noah Syndergaard had longer lasting impacts on my fandom than Matt Harvey did, funny enough. I know a lot of fans really gripped on him Matt Harvey from the beginning when he broke out right around 2013 area. I was not one of those fans. I loved Matt from the beginning, but Jacob deGrom was actually the first Mets jersey that I received with that group outside of David Wright, and that meant a lot to me as a young Mets fan, and that really kind of glued on my continued following for Jake. And my brother was gifted Noah Syndergaard's jersey years ago, so we both had respective incentive as to why we wanted to follow those pitchers a little bit more than others. But what I'm trying to make as my point here is that 2015 team was special post-trade deadline, keeping Wilmer Flores, having Yoenis Cespedes, Daniel Murphy doing the home run heroics better than anyone could ever imagine in postseason play. Having said all that, this Mets team is deeper, they are more balanced, and they are a team that I have a greater confidence level to not have in what many believe was a Fugazi run the Mets had in 2015. It wasn't Fugazi, it was legit. It just caught a lot of people off guard, including Mets fans themselves. But I'm here to tell you that as we fast forward to 2024 here, roughly a decade later, this team on paper is more talented. They have so much weapons. 1 through 9, their lineup can be oh so lethal. It's just a matter of going out there and actually doing that, right? So to all my fans, I'm curious where you guys stand on that. Do you think that this current 2024 Mets team, which has yet to even crack postseason play technically, do you view them as a better team than the 2015 Mets when we look at regular season at least? Really curious where you guys stand on that, so let us know in the live show. And my replay viewers in the comments down below, let us know there as you smash that like and subscribe on as you always do. How you doing, Lisa? Hope you're doing fantastic. Joshua, Jordy, Zach, Flakerton, Ethan, how you doing? Jesus, Stoney, Jose, Giovanni, appreciate you guys taking the time. But guys, I have a lot to break down. As you guys can see from these lineups, we have some key comments from David Stearns and Carlos Mendoza as well. So I'm actually going to defer to these comments first and foremost from David Stearns and from Carlos Mendoza. We're going to listen up on all that they had to say, and then I'm going to break down these lineups for a bit, kind of share my thoughts on what I like about this matchup for the Mets against Frankie Montas, how the Mets should be attacking him, and on the flip hand, how we should be looking at this lineup for the Milwaukee Brewers here and how they plan to attack the Simone Southpaw and Sean Manaea. So let me put in one of my earbuds here, and then let's get this going on this absolutely fine, this gorgeous evening. So happy to have Mets baseball back. I know that I've been angst for sure, but not having Mets baseball for 48 hours made me realize how much more depressed I'm going to be as soon as the offseason officially begins, whenever that might be, whether that's in a couple days or whether that's, weeks from now. All I know is I'm not looking forward to the end of baseball entirely. That's really going to be a gut punch, because then we have the whole wave of offseason coverage, which I'm excited for, but it's a lot, and it's just going to be relentless, and it's just going to be so much repetitiveness that you all know very well what we do here on the channel. We cover to a T. So let's get back to Carlos.
David just said you guys are pretty confident that Lindor is in a spot where he can now carry the load. What makes you confident in that currently?
Yeah, watching him go through the workouts the past couple of days. Last day we were in Atlanta, and then yesterday we had the opportunity to come in here and had a full workout. Took full BP, the way he was swinging the bat, the way he was moving around, the way he ran the bases, the smile on his face, the conversations we're having. So, now we just got to go out there, watch him, and continue to treat it day by day.
So there you heard it from the horse's mouth himself. Carlos Mendoza, very excited. Lindor, swing looking good there in BP. And for those that aren't aware, Mike Puma initially reported this, but reaffirmed from obviously Mendy and the Mets themselves. They were given access a day before the game yesterday because they flew in early from leaving Atlanta, avoiding the hurricane more than what they already dealt with. Landed in Milwaukee early yesterday. I believe it was around noon or so, if I'm not mistaken, Eastern at least, and they got a chance to be on the field. So Lindor was on the field yesterday. He was on the field today, pregame as well. All smiles, all Mr. Smiles. So now the big question will be, how is he looking and feeling, hopefully, after he secures his first hit or home run back in the lineup? Also, that bat, how is that going to look, as it hasn't really done anything for the past, 10 days at least now since Lindor was back in the lineup for the Mets? That's kind of nuts to say. First time since 2021, Lindor has missed that much time due to injury in a Mets uniform. So how will he bounce back, or will he be cold to start things off with the offensive end? And defensively, how is that bat going to look there with his normal pivots and great range that he has as one of the best all-around shortstops in the game today? But those are the latest remarks from Carlos Mendoza. So this is what David Stearns has to say on a couple of the following topics, not just regarding this series, but just about the Mets as a whole.
To Monday, then come back Tuesday. And how confident are you in your pitching depth?
We're confident in our pitching depth. And look, hard or not, if we have to do that, that's what we'll do. And we'll do the best we can.
To Monday, then come back to
scoreboard watching. At what point did you start scoreboard watching?
I was scoreboard watching last weekend, for sure. But yeah, the truth of this is, we win, we're in, right? Like, so we still control our own destiny, and as long as that's the case, we're most focused on what we're doing.
It's easier if they lose
lose, though. There's other teams.
What's that?
It's easier if the other teams lose, too, though.
Sure, but we can't control that. And I think it's good to be in a position that we can control.
David sounds exactly like me when I was on an SNY studio a week ago, saying how for the boys to go out there, you got to take it day by day, control your destiny, and that'll make a difference. Appreciate those remarks there from David Stearns. When asked about Luis Angel Acuna in the lineup, this is what David had to say.
What is your desire / Mendy's desire to find ways to keep Luis Angel Acuna involved and in the lineup, assuming Lindor's, back?
Yeah, I think there will be spots, whether it's in the middle of games, at the front end of games, but I think, we're going to run out the A lineup as often as we can, and as of right now, that's Lindor at shortstop and Iglesias at second base. So there may be spots later in games, but with Lindor back, obviously that playing time is going to dry up a little bit.
So he was just pretty much explaining that with Lindor back, Acuna's playing time is obviously going to dry up. It's going to be limited. I would rightfully argue that depending on how Lindor's back is over the next 24, 48 hours, hopefully it's good and all well, but God forbid if there are any, say, potential flare-ups, or if it isn't to the liking where he can have proper range and it is causing, say, defensive errors and things along those lines, then that's where it makes the most sense, in my opinion, for the Mets to then shift Lindor into the DH position for a couple games, put Acuna back at short, put Iglesias at third base, and yeah, that's actually how I would go about. Pardon me. Let me correct myself one more time, because now that I think about it, that would be in the scenario where Lindor is still in the field. Then you would have Acuna at second and Iglesias at third. If you put Lindor there at the DH spot, then obviously then you would just put Acuna there at shortstop, keep Iglesias at second, and keep Vientos at third. You could shift Vientos to the DH position should you wish in scenarios where you want to maximize the lineup and say that's a better option than considering JD Martinez, who's batting 7th for the Mets today, but has absolutely been horrendous over this past 30-plus game stretch. He has not been good at all, and that's why this series is huge for JDM on his potential impact for the Mets come postseason play should they find themselves in that position. But there's a lot of different ways the Mets can kind of go about their infield configuration, a couple at least, should Lindor's back not be to the liking after today's game and giving it a test. But God willing, everything's fine there. But in the meantime, this will limit, whether you like it or not, the playing time of Luis Angel Acuna. We just need to make sure that that's in the best interest of the team. Because right now, I think there's a great reality where you can maximize things. Should, say, for example, JD Martinez have a piss poor day at DH again, and the Mets are getting no production there. Shift Mark Vientos to DH for a game or two. Put Acuna there at second base. Put Iglesias at third. Keep Lindor at short if his back is fine. And then unravel from there, if you will. So those are the latest remarks from David Stearns. Anything further? This is on the doubleheader regarding Monday, just in case you guys want to hear some thoughts on the following.
How much of a drag? I mean, like, that's just... I've never seen anything like this, so
I mean, I don't know. We've had a lot of weird stuff this season, and so we just keep playing, and I don't think anyone is really like, frankly, I think you guys are making a much bigger deal of this than anyone in there is. I think everyone's just looking forward to playing baseball tonight. We haven't played a lot over the last week. It's a time of year where you really want to play baseball. So hopefully we play a good game tonight, and then we'll do it again tomorrow. And if we have to fly to Atlanta on Monday, we'll fly to Atlanta.
That is exactly how you need to respond in a situation like this, where all media, including myself and others, even though I'm not media, but I'm a talking head in this space, if you will, we've all been kind of nerve-wracked about that Monday doubleheader should the Mets play it. But David Stearns is as calm, cool, and collected. The triple C's, the most important things that your president of baseball operations needs to be. He is exactly that, and hopefully the Mets feel the exact same way as a whole. So that's the latest there from David Stearns and his remarks. Final thing that I will show you guys here is Francisco Lindor, and there he is throwing ahead of his return today, which we are all so excited. All smiles for the absolute jacked looking, happy smiling, our star shortstop, and Francisco MVP Lindor. So excited to have this man back in the lineup and doing amazing things for this Mets team. Now, that's all that needs to be really said there on those updates, guys. So thank you for so much for chiming in for exactly that. Now, to reel back into this, everybody, let's talk about these lineups. And I also do want to address a donation earlier. Aiden, thank you so much. A love from Ireland. Let's go Mets. All the way from Ireland. Thank you so much for the donation, my friend. God bless. Hope everything is going well over there for you and really appreciate the fact that you're a Mets fan in Ireland, whether you're just visiting or whether you currently reside in Ireland. Either way, we appreciate you spreading the fandom across the pond as brilliantly as you have, the same way as I know that we have multiple British, UK Mets fans as well. We have had Mets fans from all over the globe chime in here on the WardyNYM platform. It's always so sick, and I greatly appreciate that donation once more. Thank you so much for that. So let's start here with the Milwaukee Brewers lineup. I will rapid fire this, and then I'll get into everything on the Mets. Bryce Terrain batting leadoff at the second base position with a 657 OPS. Sal Frelick, just like Bryce Terrain, two young players there for the Milwaukee Brewers have been vital to some of their success this season. 657 OPS commanding right field. Jackson Chourio, you want to talk about a young player having success, look no further than one of the best young bats in all the National League. The 20-year-old, yes, you heard that correctly, 20-year-old has himself over 20 home runs, around 80 RBIs on the season, and we're looking at just under 800 OPS commanding left field. William Contreras, a trade that I'm sure the Atlanta Braves would love to have back in retrospect, 832 OPS for one of the best overall catchers in not only the National League, but Major League Baseball, batting fourth. Willie Adames, in a walk year with over 30 home runs, 20 stolen bags, over 110 RBIs, is looking for a massive payday, rightfully so, with right around an 800 OPS. At the shortstop position, batting fifth, he is our Francisco Lindor, so let's hope that our Francisco Lindor gets the job done and leads the way. Rhys Hoskins, and I will say it's Lindor's first game back with injury. If he goes over, won't be shocked. Even in a tight race like this, I understand. My expectations are fairly low, but I'm still hoping that Lindor hopefully at least has a 2-for-4 day with at least an RBI. That would be ideal. I think that's what we'd all hope for and expect. To a degree, Rhys Hoskins there that we see batting sixth, the Mets killer, who has a flair for the dramatic, whether it's Jeff McNeil getting his little bit of a panties in a twist after Rhys tried to, basically not purposely, but didn't really prevent colliding with McNeil at second base, even though Rhys wasn't really all that at fault. All the drama that ensued after that, Rhys Hoskins being the Mets daddy the next day in Citi Field. You want to talk about embarrassed, no worse thing than to start your season 0-5 and have a former Philly who was absolutely pain in the ass every time we play the Phillies, mind you. Just always, you know how there are certain players that, obviously you never do it, so let me clarify, but you know how there are just some people where they have a face that you just want to punch? Like, that's Rhys Hoskins is one of those guys for me. And it's nothing beyond just the fact of how his antics have been over the years with the Mets, and I just can't stand him. And obviously I'm saying that as someone who's a short schmuck sitting behind a webcam. If I was in front of Rhys Hoskins right now, no, I wouldn't punch him, but I would probably say, without question, I got to be honest, Rhys, you seem like a nice guy, but I don't like you as a player. I simply cannot stand you. And him with his 20-plus home runs, and now as we see, 720 OPS, hitting just above the Mendoza line this year. A poor man's Pete Alonso, but a poor man's Pete Alonso is all the Milwaukee Brewers need to have home run heroics in this series, because Rhys kills the Mets. Keep an eye on him. The Mets and Sean Manaea will need to be very savvy in how they plan to approach him in this series. Always a thorn in the Mets side. Joey Ortiz, another young, exciting player for the Brewers this season, commanding third base with a 737 OPS. Gary Sanchez, remember when Al Kraken was in the Mets lineup for like a week? I actually had the privilege of seeing him in a Mets uniform in person in one of the few games that he was with the Mets before ultimately ending up with the Milwaukee Brewers here. 690 OPS at the DH position. That's not a bad tandem there between William Contreras and Gary Sanchez as your 1-2 punch at the backstop position. And Blake Perkins there in center field, another youngster, 656 OPS, commanding center. Frankie Montas and his 4.85 ERA, a 4.62 expected ERA, which tells you that when we look at the advanced numbers, what he can control, he's had some bad luck, which is exactly why the ERA is a little bit more inflated. Nothing drastic. Pretty much what you see is what you're getting. Whereas Sean Manaea, for example, he's had a decent amount of luck this season. It's went in hand because of how he's changed his arm slot and how he's really been approaching batters, knowing how to induce ground ball outs, and knowing that he's going to have an infield defense that can really back him up at times, where maybe some other teams that don't have as strong infield defenses that we've seen in the second half of the season will find themselves, excluding the errors every now and then from Mark Vientos at third base. Other than that, we've been pretty much fine for the most part between Lindor, Acuna, Iglesias, not a problem. Francisco Lindor, speak of the devil, he's batting leadoff there back in the shortstop position. His 836 OPS looks to help lead the way for the Mets and lead their charge to postseason play. Mark Vientos back in the second spot, which I really like actually. Vientos and his 851 OPS commanding the third base hot corner position. Brandon Nimmo batting third. We see with a 735 OPS commanding left field. Pete Alonso, 800 OPS at first base. Jose Iglesias, oh my God, has 835 OPS, commanding second base, batting fifth. Jesse Winker, the former Milwaukee Brewer, who I firmly believe will ball out the way that I believe that he was going to against the Braves, but we had one game, he didn't do anything, and that was that. Winker in his 767 OPS, command right field. JD Martinez back in the lineup here to face Frankie Montas, in which Montas' numbers against righties are much better than lefties. Interesting choice here by Carlos Mendoza, but if you're going to try to help JDM snap out of a funk, this is the type of starter, at least on paper, that you do it with, even if his splits have him favoring, facing right-handers versus left-handers. That's just common sense for a lot of right-handed pitchers to begin with in Major League Baseball. Then we see Mr. El Troll commanding the 8th spot, 704 OPS. I'm expecting a big series from Alvarez, and you should too. Tyrone Taylor in his 714 OPS, a former Milwaukee Brewer. Expect at least hopefully one key extra base hit for an RBI in this series against his former club, commanding center field. So, as we take a look at the Mets lineup, everybody, I know a question that you might have is, how should the Mets go about attacking Frankie Montas? Great question. Well, Frankie's OPS that he has given up to left-hand hitters is skyrocketed right through the roof. It's over 800. I believe it's almost in the 850 to 870 range. Like, he has been piss poor against left-hand hitting this season. So what does that mean? Brandon Nimmo I look at right away for obvious reasons, even though that Nimmo splits are very good against lefties as they are against righties. Jesse Winker, who's torched who's torched righty pitching this season, who has not really faced much left-hand pitching, really more that platoon role, if you will, that the Mets adopted terribly a couple years ago, which is why they didn't have power in their DH position, because they didn't just opt for a platoon, but they opted for guys that simply have power, few and far in between, and Milwaukee Brewers legend Darren Ruff, Daniel Vogelback's legend Darren Ruff, or what did I just say there? Milwaukee Brewers legend and Daniel Vogelback, Milwaukee Brewers legend Darren Ruff, or Milwaukee Brewers legend Tyler Naquin. Yes, you heard that correctly. All three were Milwaukee Brewers, and all three are no longer in Major League Baseball. Shout out to Billy Epler with the disaster class there. But I digress, everybody. How the Mets are going to go about things is obviously having as many of their lefty bat options in the lineup as possible. Lindor will be batting from the left side for however long Frankie's in the game. Then when Frankie's out of the ballgame, and hopefully Lindor is staying healthy at that point, then they will go from there on if he's going to be batting from the left side or right side. What I like most about this matchup for the Mets is not when we look at head-to-head in this series, because when we look head-to-head, the Brewers have had the Mets number in recent years that we have seen to a degree, especially Milwaukee. And something that I want to shed context of, because this is absolutely obnoxious, and I highlighted this in our previous coverage. The thing I absolutely hate most about the Mets when we look at their matchups in Milwaukee is simply the fact that they're in Milwaukee. Why, you might ask? Well, the Mets are 13-8 over the past 21 games at American Family Field. If you're saying, Wardy, why is that a big deal? Because American Family Field is in Milwaukee, where the Brewers play. That's the problem. I understand that history is not current. That does not define what this current Mets team is. The Mets back in April are not the same team that they are now in comparison to the last time the Mets faced Milwaukee in general, even though it was at home at Citi Field. But I'm just kind of tempering expectations. Should some bad devil magic voodoo nonsense happen that is in a very Metsian fashion, it would not be shocking if it happened at a ballpark like this, where a lot of things have not went the Mets' way. Now, what does go in the Mets' way is a chance to actually provide offensive prowess and power in this matchup. This is a ballpark in which the ball can absolutely fly. While pitchers can certainly dominate and do their thing, I have my confidence level in Sean Manaea, David Pearson, one of Jose Quintana or Luis Severino this Sunday, which either is going to pitch, should it not be Tyler McGill, for example. My confidence level is there to a degree. So I'm more infatuated and focused on this offense and how they need to attack this pitching. It's the same way that game one against the Braves and that matchup was so important to the Mets is equally as important as what we're seeing now against Frankie Montas. Knowing that this very well could be the most susceptible pitcher that you face in this series on paper, starting pitching wise, is that vital to make sure that you go out and you attack him to the best of your abilities. Why isn't Starling Marte in the lineup? He's batting .625 against Montas because the Mets are prioritizing more on what they currently like in this lineup configuration than Marte's previous career numbers against Frankie Montas, when Marte hasn't faced Frankie Montas this season once, I believe. I could be wrong, don't quote me on that. I don't think he has, unless he did when the Mets matched up against the Reds earlier this season before he was traded to Milwaukee. What I can tell you is that the Mets like to pick and choose at times when they prioritize the lefty-righty splits and when they prioritize previous success versus said pitchers. It has not been consistent throughout the course of the year, and I think that has actually went hand with the Mets' success that they've had, knowing that they're not too reliant on the numbers every time. Hopefully, this is not an example of them being stupid by disregarding said numbers, and then we see Starling Marte come in for a pinch hit later, say against Frankie, after he won 5 shutty against the Mets, and the Mets get their first hit with Montas. Like, God forbid, if something like that were to happen, then I would understand the frustration level 1, and then that's where I would understand why you guys feel the way that you do. But simply put, for this Mets team, in a very David Stearns fashion, they got to control their destiny. Control your destiny here by doing what you got to do against a very susceptible pitcher, probably the most vulnerable one the Mets will be facing this weekend in the Milwaukee Brewers. And speaking of the Brewers and speaking of their lineup, what you have to look out for here is not only Jackson Chourio, who has been fantastic in his rookie season. William Contreras is going to be a thorn for sure that the Mets need to make sure that they kind of settle down. This guy has torched the Mets in the past, not only with the Atlanta Braves, but he's had success with the Milwaukee Brewers against the Mets. Willie Adames can be very swing and miss, but he's in a walk-year that we know. He's balling out, and he's doing what Pete Alonso wishes he was doing, and that was by having basically a career season in your walk-year, looking for a bag on a long-term contract to whoever's going to have the pleasure of signing Willie Adames, because it's likely not going to be the Brewers, knowing how cheap they are for big paydays. Rhys Hoskins, I said everything I need to say on Rhys. Joey Ortiz can be a very sneaky player to go up against as well. I like how the Mets match up to a degree when we look at the top of the things, but as we get into that 3, 4, 5, 6, that heart of the order for that line for the Milwaukee Brewers, that is where I have a certain level of concern. It's going to be imperative for Sean Manaea to kind of put things on the map and showcase how exactly he has been dominating the way that he has the second half of the season with that short arm slot, which is so drastic from what it was in the first half of the season. Far different than what the Milwaukee Brewers saw last time that they faced Mr. Sean Manaea earlier this season. Assuming that Manaea faced the Brewers once, I think he did. I think that Sean didn't have a great outing against them either, but things have changed since then, and I firmly believe that this Mets team is going to come out guns a-blazing and do everything in their power to at least secure 2 out of 3 victories in this weekend's matchup against the Milwaukee Brewers. Now, from there, what happens? How do they make playoffs? How do they clinch? We went over all those endless scenarios yesterday, so if you haven't checked them out already, I highly implore you all to do exactly that. Simply put, there are various ways that the Mets can either win a game or, win 2 out of 3 or sweep, and depending on what happens with the Diamondbacks or the Braves will dictate from there. The best scenario is the Mets control their destiny. They sweep or take 2 out of 3. One of those other dominoes falls completely flat on their ass over the next couple days, and the Mets won't even need the doubleheader for this Monday. And speaking of this doubleheader, I'm glad that I reminded myself a very important update in regards to this doubleheader that I have to share with you all is as follows. In September, there are no extra players added for a doubleheader. What does this mean? If the Mets are going to option any players, they have to send them to the minors for 10 to 15 days unless there's an injury, just like it's been throughout the course of the 162. So even though the minor league season is officially done for the Mets, especially the AAA level, the Mets would have to send someone down just to sit and collect dust for basically 2 weeks if they want to option anyone down. So, as we evaluate the doubleheader, the Mets are not going to be having that extra arm, so that is something to really bear in mind how they go about their rotation depth and their bullpen configuration over the next 24, 48, 72 hours. The Mets bullpen is heavily taxed heading into Monday's matchup, and they do need to play meaningful games in that doubleheader on Monday. They're going to have quite the battle, quite an uphill battle to deal with. They may have to consider optioning a reliever that they otherwise didn't want to do, knowing that they have to bring up someone for the sake of having a fresh arm at the time. Things could get hectic, things can get crazy as all hell, so just buckle up. Things are not too bad right now, but we don't know what's going to happen from now up until not only tonight's end, but ultimately Saturday's end, and then ultimately what we see there on Sunday. And you guys have been talking about bets in the chat as I see. Thank you guys so much for being here. I greatly appreciate that. When we speak of betting, look no further than our amazing sponsor on the channel at BetUS that has you covered all your sports betting needs. Make sure to check them out today by using promo code YouTube150. That is YouTube150. That way you too get a 150% bonus on your first deposit and then a 125% bonus on your following 3 deposits with a bonus on them for all your sports betting needs. And if you guys like to hammer the Mets, if you guys love to bias bet, then I got you covered, as the Mets are currently the money line. Yes, you heard this correctly, folks. They are the ever so slight money line favorites in this one at -109 to Milwaukee's -101 here at +150 at the run line at -1.5. So that means the Mets need to make sure that they win by at least a couple runs if you go with the run line, or to win outright if you deposit $109 and they win outright. If you deposit $100 and they win outright, you're going to come out with $209 for your total on the straight money line play. Good luck to you all that find yourself tailing these bets. For me personally, it's a very big coin flip on if I'm going to place one here, but if I am going to, obviously I'm going to bias bet my Amazons here. And as we look at other respectable matchups, we will be breaking down parlays. It's starting in tonight's post-game coverage as we look ahead for Saturday and Sunday slate of not only MLB games, but NFL slates as well, as we did a fantastic job with our NFL parlay hitting over this past weekend as we hammered both the Chiefs and the Bills for Sunday Night Football, and then Monday Night Football there back-to-back. That parlay cash, that was a nice hit for sure. Josh with the $5 donation. How you doing, my friend? Lefties against Montas are hitting nearly 900 on the OPS. Yep, we referenced that earlier in the show. And Jesse is going in with an average of 314, 14 home runs against the Brewers overall. Hope he pops off. Yeah, Jesse Winker, the former Brewer killer during his time with the Reds, the former Milwaukee Brewer, and a guy who knows this ballpark very well. That is why we're absolutely hammering Jesse Winker as our key lefty bat to ball out. The same way that I was picking him against the Braves, I'm feeling even a lot more confident in this matchup against the Milwaukee Brewers. So that is the latest on that, folks. Let's see. Not how 109 odds worked. If you deposit $100 on the 109, you're going to come out with $209 total, Jacob. If I misspoke, I apologize, but that is how it goes. $100 on a -109, you're going to find yourself... Actually, no, my mistake. If you put 109 there, then you're going to come out... You should be coming out with around the same total. I'm getting myself tongue-tied here. Why am I getting so cooked up? I don't know. Now I have an app. That website is way too... I apologize, Rob. Yes, I know if you don't love using the website, but it is greatly appreciated. It's a great way to support the channel. So thank you so much for doing exactly that. But guys and gals, I want to know, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence level in the Mets securing a victory tonight? On a scale of 1 to 10, how are we feeling? I want to read the room here. I want to see how you guys are feeling in this one before we wrap up the show. And as we wrap up the show then, folks, I will have you guys right back here for post-game coverage directly after the conclusion of tonight's, hopefully, victorious matchup. But for me and my confidence level tonight, my confidence level is above 50%. It actually is. My confidence level in the Mets winning tonight is a solid 65%. That's where I'm at. So if I had to do it at 6 out of 10, I'm do 6.5 out of 10. Is what I would rate it. Just because I don't want to jinx things too heavily. Being over 500 is one thing. Being over 50% rather is one thing. And then also potentially putting my money where my mouth is there on a bet is another. So I'm going to stick with 6.5 out of 10 for mine. I'm curious where you guys stand. We got 8.5s, we got 9s, we got 6s, we got 8s, we got 3s, we got 6s, we got 9s, we got 7s, we got 6s. Got some confidence in there. Let's see. And Scott, I love you. I love you too, Steve. I love you both in the chat. Thank you guys so much for everything that you do, being amazing supporters here. It means the absolute world to me. And I'm hoping that I'm absolutely juiced up and scream my head off later on in tonight's post-game coverage. But now that I asked you guys for your rapid fire, and the same goes for my replay viewers and comments down below, on a scale of 1 to 10, what is your confidence level in the Mets win tonight? My follow-up question to each and every one of you is as follows. What is your series prediction, everybody? Are the Mets going to win this series? Are they going to sweep? Or are they going to lose this series to the Milwaukee Brewers? That is what I want to see from each and every one of you. So if you guys could continue to rapid fire in the live show in the chat right now and on my replay viewers down below, by all means, go ahead and do exactly that. My humble opinion, which is as humble as one can be, putting all bias aside, I do believe the Mets are going to win this series. I'm knocking on wood as I say this because I'm not trying to jinx anything, but I do believe they are going to get the job done. I'm not going to sit here and say they sweep. I don't think that's going to happen, but I do think the Mets do enough to secure 2 out of 3 against Milwaukee, and hopefully, God willing, will be enough to crack postseason play and not have to worry about the doubleheader Monday, or maybe you just need to secure 1 victory on the doubleheader, and then you're going to crack postseason play, so it's not as amplified as, say, needing a series sweep there against the Braves in that 2-game set on Monday, whatever it might be. Let's see. 2 out of 3, 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 3 out of 3 says Miguel. 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 2 out of 3. 2 out of 3. Pretty much everyone feels the Mets are going to win 2 out of 3. Unless you're feeling fairly pessimistic, then you're going to go with the Mets losing the series. I will be shocked if the Mets get swept in this series 1, and I will be fairly surprised if they lose this series. It wouldn't be like out of the realm of possibility. This Brewers team is very talented. Even without Christian Yelich, this has not wavered them at all this year. But having said that, you still have to bear in mind how talented and how deep this Brewers team has been, all thanks to the fantastic job Pat Murphy has done in his first year as manager, seamlessly sliding in. It's almost like the Brewers have completely showed you exactly why the coaches only mean so much as it is the minds behind them, and not to down Craig Counsell, as I certainly want him a lot as manager, but this year is kind of further proof how you need to have a proper structure and organization to get to where you want to be, and that manager can help propel you from there. When we evaluate Pat Murphy and Craig Counsell, it is very impressive to see Craig Counsell is pretty much the highest paid manager in baseball, taking the Chicago Cubs to absolutely nowhere in year 1 of a year where they, yes, dealt with a fair share of injuries, but also a talented ball club that I think had enough talent on their roster to potentially warrant cracking the wild card play the way that Pat Murphy completely did a fantastic job on really bringing all these young talents in Milwaukee this year, all these rookies or these sophomores potentially coming in for a slump year. Nope, not under Pat Murphy's watch. He's going to get the job done for them. So really commend them what they have done this year for sure. Turn the scoreboard off. LFG. What are we talking about scoreboard wise? I must have missed something there, but I digress, everybody. I greatly appreciate the comments here. I think we're all under the same common consensus. The Mets just need to make sure that they hopefully secure a series victory, control your destiny, and take things from there. Great things tend to happen when the Mets kind of put their foot down and say, you know what, I'm not going to rely on the people around me. I'm going to just go out there and do what I need to do. Appreciate the donations from you guys earlier as well. Anthony, thank you so much for the $5 donation. Anthony says, how do you feel about all the different scenarios for the Mets to get in? What scenario do I prefer? What I prefer most is that the Mets just sweep. That's what I prefer. What I prefer is that the Mets sweep, don't got to worry about Monday, and hopefully the Diamondbacks or Braves, one of them didn't fare too well in their series, and that's that. Because here's the thing, the Mets have the tiebreaker on Arizona right now. So all the Mets need to do is to have a better weekend than the Arizona Diamondbacks. It's as pretty as simple as that. They just need to have a better weekend than the Diamondbacks, and then hopefully, God willing, they will have clinched at that point. But if they do need to secure a split on the doubleheader on Monday, there's just going to be a lot of stresses to make sure you get that one thing in. All I care about is that the Mets do everything in their power to clinch as soon as humanly possible. There's one specific scenario that I think sexier than the other, but if I had to pick one, it's the obvious, is the obnoxious one. Sweep, hope that the other teams will do as well as you, and then you're going to find yourself in postseason play. Cam, thank you so much for the donation. Greens by Mets Dugout. Real hard for the win. Awesome. Hope you have a fantastic time at the game camp. Congratulations for being there, and hopefully you get to witness a victorious matchup just as you did last time you were at Citi Field, getting your stuff signed by Francisco Lindor and being there for one of the best games of the regular season. So appreciate the support there plenty, my friend. I really greatly appreciate that. Let's see here. They're only hitting .212 versus left-handed pitching. Since Mean in the chat, are you referring to the Mets collectively against left-handed pitching this season, or are you talking about the Brewers against left-handed pitching? I'm assuming it's the latter, considering Mr. Frankie Montas is not a southpaw, but Sean Manaea is. That's good news for this Mets team and for Sean Manaea to attack the Brewers hitters, should that be the case. Yanni with a $2 donation. Thank you so much. LFGM, Vientos going to have a big series. Yeah, hopefully. Vientos moving back in the 2-hole. I like that. Kind of going back to how things were at times plenty before Lindor went down with injury. Hopefully we see a front-loaded, top-heavy lineup. Hopefully we see depth with JD Martinez, Jesse Winker getting their heads out of their asses, especially JDM in particular. And hopefully we see guys in Alvarez and Tyrone do their thing. And Alonso, I just hope Pete is confident today. That's a big thing. But I will be rooting hard for each and every one of these guys, just like each and every one of you. So with that being said, everybody, that is going to do it for our live coverage. Thank you all so much for watching. This was our latest New York Metropolitan pregame show presented by BetUS that has you covered all your sports betting needs. Make sure to check them out once more by using Wardy's promo code YouTube150. That way you too get 150% bonus on your first deposit, and then a 125% bonus on your following two, for a total of 3 for all your sports betting needs. I will see you all right after the conclusion of tonight's ball game. Until then, have a fantastic rest of your night, day, evening,